In the startup world, you often hear about this idea of the one metric that matters. It's the one metric that defines the health of your business at an overall level, and it's meant to be this rallying point for the team, something that everybody can focus on and move in the same direction. Companies are often overflowing with data or competing interests, and the one metric that matters provides clarity and focus and avoids them being paralyzed and allows them to kind of maintain healthy momentum and cohesion. But I think a similar approach can be helpful in our own lives. I think that you can create one metric that matters for yourself the same way that companies do. My name is Sean Johnson, founding partner at Manifold, which is a venture holding company in Chicago. For 9 years, been a professor at Kellogg, teaching in the entrepreneurship program. And I've been thinking a lot about this idea of one metric that matters for my life. There was a story I heard a long time ago from Donald Miller, and he was talking about a guy that he knew when he was a child who passed away in his hometown. And so many people wanted to attend the funeral that they had to rent out a baseball field just to accommodate everybody. He lived in a small town in Texas and nobody had ever heard of this guy. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't a famous celebrity. He was not a rapper or an athlete. He didn't even have a website or a Twitter account or any of these kinds of things. But he invested in people's lives. He got to know them deeply. He spent time learning what would make them tick, tried to help them out however he could, cheered them up when they were feeling down. He celebrated with them when they won, consoled them when they lost, pushed them when they needed pushing, hugged them when they needed a hug. And as a result, he just made a material investment in these people's lives. None of this was scalable. He didn't reach millions of people. He did this one person at a time. And most likely he wasn't even really thinking about what he was doing. He didn't contemplate how remarkable or unremarkable it was. He was just doing what came naturally to him. As Miller said, he wasn't seeking the spotlight. He was a spotlight. He was shining light on other people and on their lives. I remember going to a wedding probably 10 years ago now, and it was the most unique wedding I've ever been to. The bride and the groom both had pretty small families, but the wedding was attended by over 300 people. Almost all of them were friends that she had made in the last 5 years. And it wasn't because she was important. It wasn't because she was part of the entrepreneurial scene or the Chicago movers and shakers. She simply poured her life out to other people. She would routinely call us up and tell us that she was in the neighborhood and want to stop by and watch our kids while we went on a spontaneous date, which many of you have young kids and you know how hard it is to kind of pull yourself away and actually spend some time together. That was a really meaningful thing that she did. She would volunteer to dog sit for people on vacation. She would help people move, which is something that, I've always hoped that people wouldn't ask me to do, but she did it with joy in her heart. If a mom, needed to work a second job or something like that, she would volunteer to babysit for them for free. She'd make dinner, let the kids stay until, mom or dad got home from work, often late at night. And just the idea was like the people weren't there because she was famous or important. The people weren't there because it was going to be a spectacular wedding or a wedding that you'd want to be seen at or any of those kinds of things. It was actually a very simple wedding. The reception was in a basement of a community center. And I remember there not being, I think maybe the AC was broken or something like that. It was very warm. There were almost no decorations. But when the minister said that you can kiss the bride, I don't know if I've ever heard cheers louder than that at any wedding that I've ever been to. When the sound cut off on the PA during the daughter-father dance, 300 people started singing the words so that they could keep dancing. And just every single person that was there loved her in a way that was, I think, utterly unique. And they loved her because she changed their lives kind of one person at a time. It was not a scalable thing. She just poured herself out for them. The world I inhabit is full of people that are trying to kind of make something of themselves. And that includes me. More often than I would like to admit. I think if a lot of us are honest, we measure ourselves according to things like income or the amount of equity we have in a company or the square footage of our houses or how many countries we've been to or the number of followers that we have on social media. And deep down, we know that as great as these things might be, they're not going to make us happy. And yet we spend tremendous amounts of our time chasing those things anyway, because we don't know what else to use. We don't know what other metric to use. We're confused about the metrics that we should be using to measure our lives by. I took a course a long time ago with Michael Gerber, and he asked you to imagine that you were in a room and it's your funeral and a recording comes on and it's your voice and you're talking to the people that were there about your life and about the impact that you had, the things that you did. and asked, what would you say? And I thought that was a really useful framing. But it also got me thinking, like, what if you flipped it on its head? What if you now instead imagined a baseball field? And instead of a recording of you, there's a microphone in the middle for other people. How many people would be there? Would it be a couple dozen people? Would you be able to fill the place up? What sort of impact would you have to have on someone's life for them to take a day out of their lives or a week out of their lives and fly across the country to be at your funeral? How would you have needed to love them or build into their lives or invested in them when things were hard or cheered them on when things were going well for them to do that? What would the audience say into the microphone? What would the stories be that they would tell? How long would the funeral take? How many people would want to get up there and talk about you? Would their stories be about the multiple that you got on the business? Would it be on the appreciation of your house or how nice your teeth are or who you got to take a picture with at some conference? How many retweets you got on a post? Probably not, right? And yet that's what many of us spend a lot of our times thinking about. And so, I've been rallying around this idea of funeral worthy relationships as the one metric that matters in my life. What do I need to do? How do I need to start living in order for me to influence that number? Some people might find that to be a little bit morbid, but I think it's a really good way to get clarity on my priorities, certainly. I think it would make a very useful one metric that matters for many of us. I think one reason why people talk about the multiples that they got on their exits is it's a way of keeping score. Right? It's one of the nice things about business is it allows us to easily see, it's not about the money per se, but it tells you, how did you do? Did you do a good job? Did you do a bad job? The money is a way of assessing that. And we don't have that to the same degree kind of in our personal lives. But I think that this might be that funeral-worthy relationships would be a really good litmus test because it encapsulates a whole bunch of things, stories that you created for people, adventures that you took them on, ways that you went above and beyond to invest in their lives. Of course, you would never know the actual answer because you would already be gone, but you could probably make a reasonably accurate guess. So what if you wanted to double that number or 10x that number? How would you need to live your life differently? Well, what decisions would you need to make about how you organize your time, how you organize your priorities, what you find your mind gravitating towards when you have spare time? What would it take to fill up a baseball field with people who love you because of the impact that you've made in their lives, one person at a time? What would change in your life if you made funeral-worthy relationships the one metric that matters in your life?